Alrighty, guys, hopefully you have all had a chance to see Thunderbolts by now. If you haven't checked out my non-spoiler or spoiler review, I loved Thunderbolts. I thought it was fantastic, no pun intended, for the Fantastic Four First Steps, which is going to be the next MCU film. This segment is not necessarily going to be spoiler-filled, so if you haven't seen Thunderbolts, you can feel free to stick around. I'm not really going to talk about anything in super high detail here for Thunderbolts. Maybe I will at the very end, but I wanted to talk about here why I think Thunderbolts is so encouraging and why I think it's a big step forward for the MCU. We're going to talk about later in the podcast a report that came out that talks about how Kevin Feige is rethinking the future of the MCU and the way that he's approaching it. And I think Thunderbolts is really an encouraging first step towards that. So I think that it's all good here. And I wanted to talk about why. 3 reasons why I think Thunderbolts is such an encouraging project for the MCU. And they're kind of broad reasons, but I think that they're worth talking about here. So number 1, and I've said this before, the MCU is built on its characters. The MCU does not exist without its characters. And I know, no duh, right? No movie exists without their characters. But the MCU is built like a giant TV show. And I've always said this. Movies can get away with flimsy characters if the story is the most, the strongest part. I think for movies, storytelling is the most important part of a film. I think that if you're going to watch a movie for 2 hours, if the characters don't work, that's fine. Stick with the story, right? Have a good narrative. But TV, you're investing hours and hours and hours of your time, and you need to spend it with these characters. They need to be worth it. And the MCU functions that way. And I think recently what we've gotten away from is just introduce new character. These characters have to recur, right? These characters have to continue to be the focus of these projects so that we're excited to see them again. I think Thunderbolts really nailed the characters. Yelena, Red Guardian, U.S. Agent, Ghost, Taskmaster, Bucky, I think, and Val and Bob, and all these characters are rich. And sure, some of them are not as rich as others, but really what I'm talking about here is the fact that the movie focused on the characters and really made them the central driving force of the film. Speaking of characters, number 2, there is interconnectivity, once again, with this film into the wider MCU without sacrificing the story. I mean, let's be honest, right? Interconnectivity inherently, because a lot of these characters, all of these characters, were taken from other side franchises and side projects. Yelena and Red Guardian and Taskmaster were taken from Black Widow. U.S. Agent was taken from the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Ghost was taken from Ant-Man and the Wasp. And Bucky obviously was taken, he's from all over the MCU, right? Val has been in the MCU for a little while, and we're introducing some new characters like Bob and the character played by Geraldine Viswanathan, I think. That's how you pronounce her last name. Anyways, what this shows is that there is still interconnectivity, right? But it's not like this film is a cameo fest or just putting these characters in a room together for the sake of it and saying, hey, wouldn't it be cool if Bucky and Yelena talked? That'd be really cool, because there is a world in which that is the entire movie. Oh, isn't it fun that Red Guardian is talking to another super soldier like Bucky, and also U.S. Agent is there? Isn't it fun if? Isn't it fun if? Isn't it fun if? Right? There is a world in which that happens. This film is very connected to the MCU. There's a lot of stuff going on in here that is very connected to the MCU. But the story comes first. The characters come first, and then the characters the story is in service of those characters. And that's really encouraging, because that is what the MCU did. It's, yes, some of the pairings that have come before in the MCU don't always feel like on the surface level the exact best fit. Thor and Hulk, when I first heard about that for Thor Ragnarok, I was like, what is going on? It worked beautifully because those characters were put in the right places at the right times to serve the story. The story serves them, and it's not just like, hey, wouldn't it be fun if? Even though that is really what the Thor and Hulk fight is in Ragnarok, but it serves the story. Right? Same with Spider-Man and Iron Man. It's not just, hey, isn't it cool that Spider-Man and Iron Man are teaming up together? It really serves the purpose of Tony mentoring this kid, Peter Parker, and that continues on throughout the rest of the MCU as we approached Endgame, right? Tony and Peter. It was a big deal in Infinity War and Endgame as well. Not gonna lie, I like Captain America: Brave New World enough. I do think the Red Hulk part of it was really one of those wouldn't it be cool if kind of moments. And it's cool. It is cool. I mean, if I watch those scenes in isolation, it's cool. But it didn't really feel like it was an integral part of, why is Sam Wilson a part of this? What's Sam Wilson's journey and all of this kind of stuff? It just didn't feel like that was the case. And I think Thunderbolts did a really good job of balancing all of those things. And number 3, because all of those things work, the setup for the future of the MCU is super bright. I'm not going to spoil it here. We're not going to talk about the post-credit scenes. But for those of you who have seen the 2 post-credit scenes, you'll know the way in which they play out is incredibly exciting for the MCU moving forward because we care about these characters now. We care about what happened to them in the film. That the post-credit scene, which I don't think this is a spoiler to say that they have, based on the implications of what happens in Thunderbolts, move the the story forward in the MCU and get you excited about what happens next. I think that is a huge win. Remember those days? Remember when we watched Doctor Strange and Thor showed up at the end? We were all so excited for that. Remember in Black Panther when we saw Bucky in the post-credit scene and we were like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? Remember at the end of Civil War, even when we saw Black Panther again? It was like those kinds of moments that were built on the characters, built on the stories, but weren't just Charlize Theron showing up in the middle of the street and being like, hey, I'm here now. Or wasn't, I don't know, what's another example? Harry Styles just showing up and be like, hey, I'm here now, right? Or Brett Goldstein, I almost said Roy Kent. Brett Goldstein showing up as Hercules and being like, hey, I'm here now. These post-credit scenes that are in Thunderbolts really understand what was important to the movie, what made the movies work, and set up the future of the MCU in a really exciting way. I'm so excited for what comes next based on those credit scenes, and I hope you guys are as well. So this is a formula, and I say formula. Formula, has gotten a bad rap, especially when it comes to the MCU of like, oh, it's the MCU formula. I don't think formula is a bad thing to say. It's sort of the MCU's way of working, right? And I think that it worked so well. They got away from it a little bit. I think Shang-Chi was another perfect example of how this could work. Great movie, great characters, great story. Post-credit scene, Bruce Banner and Carol Danvers talking to Shang-Chi and Wong. That's awesome, right? We got so excited for that. We haven't seen Shang-Chi. We're not going to see Shang-Chi for between 5 years, right? Between Shang-Chi 1 and Avengers Doomsday. It's really sad. It sucks. But I hope that the MCU is getting back to this. We're going to talk more about this in a later segment where we talk about a report that talks about Kevin Feige and his plan for the MCU in the future. But I'm just really encouraged by all of this. So, guys, what do you think about Thunderbolts being a big step forward in the MCU? Do you guys agree with me or do you guys disagree with me? Let me know in the comments down below.